The closure of the monastery. For almost 450 years, life in the Charterhouse of Allerengelberg followed the same quiet rhythm. Generations of monks lived, prayed, and died within these walls. Then, in 1782, everything changed. Not because of war or natural disaster, but because of one man. Emperor Joseph II of Austria. A new way of thinking. Joseph II was one of the great reformers of the Enlightenment. He believed that every institution should serve a practical purpose for society. Schools educated children. Hospitals cared for the sick. But monasteries whose monks devoted their lives almost entirely to prayer were, in his opinion, no longer useful to the state. He believed they contributed little to the common good. As a result, he ordered the closure of hundreds of contemplative monasteries throughout the Habsburg Empire. The Charterhouse of Allerengelberg was one of them. The end of monastic life. The monks were forced to leave. Some joined other Carthusian monasteries, while others received a small pension and returned to civilian life. After nearly 4.5 centuries, the silence of the monastery came to an end. The monastery itself was dissolved, and all its lands, buildings and possessions became property of the state. What happened to the estate? Joseph II established a religious fund, into which the wealth of the dissolved monasteries was transferred. The income from these properties was intended to finance parishes, schools and charitable institutions. At first, the Charterhouse was purchased by Monsignor Count Castracane, who advanced 5,000 florins. However, he soon abandoned the project. In 1794, the entire estate was auctioned by the government. It was purchased by Count Hans Hendel for 7,500 florins. Instead of preserving the monastery as a single property, he divided it into smaller plots and sold them to local farmers and craftsmen. This decision changed the future of Karthaus forever. From monastery to village. The former monastery gradually became a village. Families moved into the monks' cells and converted them into homes. Workshops, stables and barns replaced places once dedicated to silence and prayer. The monastery walls remained, but life inside them was completely transformed. What had once been one of the strictest monastic communities in Europe slowly evolved into the village we see today. As we walk through Karthaus, many of the houses around us still contain parts of the original monastery buildings. In other words, this is not a village built next to a monastery, it is a village built inside one. Did you know? Unlike many former monasteries that became museums or palaces, the Charterhouse of Allerengelberg never lost its role as a living community. People still live in many of the former monastic buildings today, making Karthaus one of the few places where everyday village life continues within the walls of a medieval Charterhouse. Although the monastery had disappeared, its buildings remained. As we continue our walk, we will step into the former eremitic section, where the monks once spent their lives in silence. There, we can still discover original architectural details that have survived for more than 500 years and imagine what daily life inside the Charterhouse was really like.